want to tell you what actually happens when a human being sits down every day for 30 days and does nothing. Not nothing in the way that word is usually used. Not the nothing of distraction. Not the nothing of rest. The nothing of pure attention. Of sitting with what is, without trying to change it, without trying to understand it, without moving toward anything at all. What happens in that nothing is one of the most significant things a human being can experience, and almost nobody describes it accurately. Let me start with what does not happen. You do not achieve peace on day 1, or day 5, or day 12. What you achieve on those days is an introduction to the full volume of your own mind. Most people, when they first sit in silence, are genuinely shocked by what they find there. The noise, the speed, the relentlessness of it. Thought after thought after thought, arriving without invitation, departing without resolution, each one pulling your attention toward some version of the past or some version of the future. Never here. Never simply here. And the first thing most people conclude from this experience is that they are doing it wrong. They are not doing it wrong. They are, for possibly the first time in their lives, actually seeing what has always been happening. The mind has always been this loud, this fast, this relentless in its movement. You simply never sat still enough to notice. Every other hour of your life gave the mind somewhere to put its energy. A task, a screen, a conversation, a worry with a destination. The moment you remove all of those, the moment you sit down and offer the mind nothing to something begins to shift. Not the noise remains. What shifts is your relationship to it. You begin to notice, sometimes for only a second, sometimes for longer, that you are not the noise. You are the one noticing the noise. And that distinction, which can be described in a single sentence but takes most people years to actually feel, begins to create a space, a small one, almost imperceptible at first, between the thought and the reaction to the thought, between the feeling and the story about the feeling, between what happens and what you decide it means. That space, that tiny, barely there gap, is everything. Because in that gap, you discover something that changes the entire architecture of how you move through a life. You discover that you have a choice. Not about what arises. You cannot control what arises. The thought comes, the feeling comes, the memory, the fear, the craving, all of it comes, uninvited and on its own schedule. But in that gap, you discover that what comes next is not automatic. That the reaction you have had 10,000 times before, the snap of anger, the collapse into anxiety, the retreat into numbness, is a habit, not a truth, not an inevitability, not who you are. A habit, with a space before it, that you never noticed because you were never still enough to see it. By day 20, the body begins to change. This surprises people. They expected something to happen in the mind. They did not expect to feel it in the chest, in the shoulders, in the jaw they have been clenching without knowing it for longer than they can remember.
The body holds what the mind cannot process. This is not metaphor. This is physiology. When the mind is given consistent stillness, when the nervous system is no longer in a state of constant low-grade emergency, the body begins to release what it has been storing. Old tension, old contractions, the physical residue of every feeling that was experienced but never completed. You might find around day 20 that you cry, without knowing why, without a story attached to it. That is not a problem. That is the body finally having enough silence to finish something it started a long time ago. By day 30, you will not be enlightened. I want to be very clear about that. You will not have solved the mind. You will not have achieved a permanent state of peace. You will not have transcended the ordinary difficulties of being a human being in a complicated world. What you will have is something more useful than any of those things. You will have evidence, personal, undeniable, lived evidence that the noise is not you, that the anxiety that announces itself as permanent passes, that the anger that feels like truth is, more often than not, a signal about something much older than the thing that triggered it, that the mind, left to itself, tells stories constantly about the past, about the future, about what people think of you, about what you should have done differently, about what is coming that you cannot control, and that those stories, however convincing, are not reality. They are the mind's attempt to make sense of a world that will never fully cooperate with the need for sense. What meditation actually teaches, across 30 days, across 1,000 sessions, across a lifetime of practice, is not how to stop the stories. It is how to watch them, with enough distance that you are no longer simply inside them, swept along, unable to distinguish between what is happening and what the mind is saying about what is happening. That distance, that simple, fundamental, world-altering distance, is what people mean when they speak of clarity. Not the absence of confusion, the ability to see the confusion clearly from somewhere slightly outside of it. I want to address something that keeps most people from ever finding out what those 30 days could do for them. The belief that they cannot do it. That their mind is too busy, too loud, too undisciplined. That other people can meditate, but they, specifically, are not built for it. I want to tell you something about that belief. The people who are most convinced they cannot sit still are precisely the people who most need to. The loudness of the mind is not a disqualification. It is the diagnosis. You do not need a quiet mind to meditate. You need the willingness to sit with an unquiet one. That is all. That is the entire practice. Sit, notice, return. When the mind wanders, and it will, notice that it wandered and return. Not with judgment, not with the sense that you have failed, with the same neutral attention you would give to the weather. It rained. Now it has stopped. The mind wandered. Now it has returned. Neither event requires your opinion. By the end of 30 days, you will know something that cannot be read in a book, that cannot be understood from the outside, that requires exactly 30 days of sitting with your own mind to discover. You will know what it feels like to be slightly less at the mercy of the thing inside your head, to have, even occasionally, the experience of watching a thought without being pulled into it, to feel anxiety arise and know from somewhere in your body that it will pass, because you have watched it